The global foreign exchange market processes $9.6 trillion every single day. That is $2.7 quadrillion annually. And Ripple just quietly confirmed that their payment network already covers 90% of that daily FX market volume. Not a projection, not a target, current operational coverage, live today. At the same time, Elizabeth Warren is making her most desperate move yet to kill Ripple's bank charter. And President Trump just named XRP directly on Truth Social, calling it part of America's crypto capital that other countries are trying to take from us. Today we connect all three threads and show you exactly what is being built underneath the price action that most people are completely missing. This is XRP verified. Let us get into it. Let us start with the FX market, because this number deserves more attention than it is getting. The Bank for International Settlements reports that the global foreign exchange market now processes approximately $9.6 trillion per day. Annualized, that is $2.7 quadrillion in FX transactions every single year. This is the largest financial market in the world, and it runs on infrastructure that is embarrassingly outdated. A cross-border currency conversion between a business in Brazil and a supplier in Vietnam still touches 3 or 4 intermediary banks. It still takes 2 to 5 days to settle. It still loses a meaningful percentage to fees and spreads along the way. That is not an edge case. That is the standard for the entire global FX system right now. Ripple has spent years methodically building the alternative, and the number they just confirmed publicly is staggering. Ripple Payments now covers 90% of daily FX market volume by geography, with over $70 billion in real processed transaction volume. That is not a pitch deck projection. That is not a pilot program. That is current operational coverage across live payment corridors being used by real businesses and financial institutions right now. Think about what it takes to build that kind of footprint. Banking relationships in every market, regulatory compliance across jurisdictions, local payment rails, liquidity partnerships, operational infrastructure globally. This does not get built in a quarter. This is years of deliberate infrastructure development. And Ripple has done it quietly, while most of the crypto industry was focused elsewhere. Now here is what this means for XRP specifically. When banks use XRP as a bridge asset to provide FX liquidity, instead of pre-funding Nostro and Vostro accounts in every foreign currency, they need to hold XRP to execute those transactions. XRP sits between the Brazilian real and the Vietnamese dong. Someone in that transaction needs to be holding it. And at institutional scale, that someone is the participating financial institution. The $27 trillion currently locked in Nostro and Vostro accounts globally represents dead capital sitting idle just to keep the correspondent banking system functioning. XRP eliminates the need for that pre-funding. Settlement in under 5 seconds, near zero cost, no correspondent banks in the chain. That $27 trillion gets unlocked and deployed productively for the first time in the history of global finance. That is not a speculative thesis. That is a mechanical outcome of the technology being adopted. Now let us talk about Ripple Prime, because this is the piece of the architecture that most retail investors are not fully pricing in. In late 2025, Ripple completed the acquisition of Hidden Road, a global multi-asset prime brokerage, and rebranded it as Ripple Prime. A prime brokerage is not just a trading venue. It is a relationship infrastructure. Hedge funds, asset managers, banks, and institutional trading desks use prime brokers for financing, clearing, execution, and custody across multiple asset classes. Prime brokers sit at the center of how institutional capital moves and manages risk. Ripple now owns one. Ripple Prime operates across foreign exchange, clearing, financing, swaps, derivatives, fixed income, and digital assets. It is a full-service institutional financial services stack, and Ripple owns the whole thing. And 8 days ago, Ripple Prime integrated with EDX Markets, the institutional trading venue founded by some of the largest names in traditional finance, including Citadel Securities, Fidelity, and Charles Schwab. This is not a retail exchange. This is where serious institutional traders access digital asset exposure without the compliance and counterparty risk concerns that come with retail-facing platforms. Ripple Prime clients now have access to spot and perpetual futures through a capital-efficient prime brokerage framework. In plain English, institutional clients can now trade XRP through a prime brokerage that gives them the execution quality, credit access, and capital efficiency they expect from their traditional financial infrastructure. The full stack is now in place. Payment rails, prime brokerage, institutional trading, digital asset liquidity, all under Ripple's umbrella. No other crypto company has assembled this architecture. And in 3 days, on May 29th, CME Group launches 24/7 XRP futures contracts. CME is the world's largest derivatives exchange. Institutions use futures for hedging and risk management, not speculation. When CME opens XRP futures around the clock, it is not doing that for retail traders. It is doing it because institutional demand for XRP hedging infrastructure is real and growing. You do not build 24/7 futures infrastructure for an asset without a serious institutional client base that needs it. This is the market signaling that Clarity Act passage is expected, because you do not offer the world institutional derivatives infrastructure for a digital asset without the legislative framework to support it. Now let us address Elizabeth Warren, because she is making her most aggressive move yet, and it requires a direct response. She sent a formal letter to the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency demanding full confidential application documents for 9 recently approved trust company charters. Ripple National Trust Bank is specifically named and highlighted in that letter. Her demands include the full applications with confidential exhibits, detailed activity lists with legal analysis, and questions about whether the OCC is overstepping its authority under the National Bank Act. Let us be clear about what this is. The OCC has already approved the charters. Warren's letter does not reverse that. It does not block Ripple from operating. What it is a senator in the final stages of a losing rearguard action, trying to build a paper trail for future oversight hearings. She is not winning this fight. She is documenting her objections for the record. The crypto industry has had an almost perfect track record of defeating anti-crypto candidates in recent primary elections, and that pattern is accelerating. President Trump responded to the broader crypto environment directly on Truth Social this week. He named XRP specifically alongside Bitcoin in a statement about protecting American financial leadership. His exact framing: "We are currently the crypto, Bitcoin, XRP capital of the world, and other countries are trying diligently to replace us in that capacity, but we will not let that happen. It is a major industry, and we must protect it." A sitting U.S. president named XRP directly in an official statement. That is not casual. That is deliberate positioning. And the Clarity Act continues to move toward a floor vote this summer. Senator Marino confirmed it is on track for July, whether on the 4th or later in the month. The critical mechanic to understand is that the Clarity Act is not for XRP. XRP already has legal clarity. It has been formally classified as a digital asset commodity by both the CFTC and the SEC. There is no ambiguity. The Clarity Act is for the banks and financial institutions. They cannot deploy capital into XRP infrastructure at institutional scale without the legal framework that removes their compliance liability. When that framework passes, Ripple's 90% FX coverage becomes the on-ramp that every bank in America can legally access. The $27 trillion in Nostro accounts begins to unlock. CME futures give institutions the hedging tools they need, and Ripple Prime gives them the institutional execution infrastructure they are already familiar with. The architecture is complete. The legislation is the final key. On the price side, a respected Korean analyst with a strong XRP track record puts the base case at $5 if XRP continues within its long-term channel. The bull case: if XRP breaks the upper edge of its decade-long channel, similar to the 2018 breakout setup, is $20. These are not random numbers. When you understand that Ripple Prime and Ripple Treasury together have access to $16 trillion in institutional financial flow, and the DTCC is launching $114 trillion of tokenization infrastructure in October, with Ripple Prime inside the working group, asking whether a $1 trillion market cap for XRP is realistic within a year of Clarity passing is not an outrageous question. It is a straightforward calculation. Now let us address the Iran peace deal situation briefly, because it is directly affecting crypto markets right now. Reports indicate both sides remain at the negotiating table, despite continued military posturing. The U.S. wants guarantees on nuclear enrichment. Iran is seeking release of frozen assets. The pattern is classic brinkmanship. Both sides push to the edge before agreeing. Political incentives on the U.S. side are clear. Oil needs to come down before November elections, and a deal is the fastest path to lower energy prices. When the deal is formally signed, the geopolitical risk premium that has been suppressing global markets, including crypto, gets removed immediately. Energy prices drop, risk assets recover, and the crypto market, which has been in a holding pattern waiting for both geopolitical resolution and legislative clarity, gets both catalysts at the same time. Let me bring all of this together. Ripple covers 90% of the $9.6 trillion daily global FX market, with $70 billion in real processed volume. Ripple Prime, a full-service institutional prime brokerage, just integrated with the institutional trading venue backed by Citadel, Fidelity, and Schwab. CME launches 24/7 XRP futures in 3 days, a clear institutional demand signal. Elizabeth Warren's letter to the OCC is a rearguard action that does not reverse the approved charters. Trump named XRP directly in an official Truth Social statement about protecting American financial leadership. The Clarity Act is targeting July passage, unlocking $27 trillion in Nostro capital for institutional deployment. And a potential Iran peace deal removes the last major geopolitical headwind suppressing risk asset prices globally. The infrastructure is built. The institutional relationships are confirmed. The regulatory path is clearing. Stay informed. Stay patient. Stay positioned. If this video gave you real value today, subscribe to XRP Verified. I cover these developments every single day, so you always know what is happening before the rest of the market figures it out. I will see you in the next one.